So, I'm scrolling through my Twitter timeline yesterday, and an interesting little headline popped up. Now, this is an article by Ringside News, so right away, hardly the most reliable source on the planet, but nevertheless, I thought it would be an interesting video and make for an interesting talking point. The story, the headline, the article, Vince McMahon possibly disowned, I repeat, disowned WWE NXT brand. Okay, this story is by Felix Upton, and right off the bat, I just want to say, as of making this video, this story has 19 upvotes and 39 downvotes, so you can tell it's going over an absolute treat on Ringside News. The article, I'll read through it now. Survivor Series is taking place on November 22nd, and they started booking the event tonight on Raw. One thing they didn't make any mention of was NXT. Ringside News reported that there was no talk of NXT in the build for Survivor Series. This was later confirmed by the brand not getting booked or mentioned for Survivor Series. It might go a bit further than that. During Wrestling Observer Radio, the ever-reliable Dave Meltzer said that Vince McMahon might want to, here's the word, disown the NXT brand because they haven't performed to the extent he expected. And then there's a quote by Meltzer, "I'll tell you what, I think Vince wants to disown that whole brand because they're getting beat." The Wednesday Night War seemingly belongs to AEW Dynamite. WWE will have glimpses where they can get a boost in viewership. Halloween Havoc might help against a pre-taped Dynamite, but they have lost consistently since last year. Vince McMahon might not be too ready to put a ton of confidence in them for that reason, but he should also know that NXT would perform much better if they would move the black and gold brand to a different night of the week. So that's the article. Right away, I want to say this quote by Meltzer is very Dave Meltzer. It comes off very much like, you know, he's on the AEW payroll, one of these type of comments, a very pro AEW comment. I'll repeat this once again. I'll tell you what, I think Vince wants to disown that whole brand because they're getting beat. Like, it doesn't come off as a very unbiased or objective kind of comment from Meltzer there, but anyway, forgetting Meltzer's objectivity, moving that to the side, I think this whole notion of Vince McMahon disowning NXT, it's an interesting one because, look, NXT, objectively speaking, has been, look, I would say a failure, but I guess when you put it in the perspective that moving NXT off the WWE Network to the USA Network to counter-program AEW Dynamite, it has inhibited Dynamite's viewers to an extent, but based off the ratings about 2 months ago when the shows, you had NXT on Tuesday and Dynamite on Wednesday, the ratings weren't much different. Like, AEW were getting 900,000 to 1 million instead of 800,000 like they were getting before, you know, like, the counter-programming thing hasn't been that big of a deal. Like, out of NXT's audience, the 630-odd thousand who watch it every week, we've seen now that about nearly 400,000 of that are 50+, and most of them are WWE lifers, so there's not much of a crossover audience there. And as a result, NXT moving to the USA Network to counter-program AEW has been near enough an abject failure in that regard. So, to think that Vince McMahon would want to, quote-unquote, disown NXT, now, that's a very Dave Meltzer kind of over-exaggeration type term. I think disown's a bit over the top. Maybe distance himself from NXT a bit, not be as hands-on, you know, not care as much about NXT. I think that's probably the better way of putting it. I think Vince probably sees the talent pool and the roster in NXT now, and thinks how, like, shallow that roster is now compared to how it used to be. Like, the NXT roster a year ago was actually, like, really good. But now you look at the NXT roster and you go, this is as thin as paper. Finn Balor, the champion, is injured again, as he usually gets injured. Finn Balor's injured again. Johnny Gargano is still there, but is anyone really caring? Like, he has fans who enjoy his matches, but is anyone going, oh my god, Johnny's on TV? Yes. You know, how many people are out there doing that? And, I mean, who else do you have on this roster? I mean, Damian Priest I've talked about for months. He's the shining light. Cross is out injured. And Keith Lee's gone. Io Shirai's there for the women. Ember Moon's there. Like, the women's roster's good. But is that going to really boost up ratings? But at the same time, is anything going to boost up ratings? Like, this is the conundrum with NXT. NXT is developmental. We've seen that now without a shadow of a doubt. It's developmental as a third brand. It's not legitimate. I talked about this in my Survivor Series, not 2019 review the other day. It's not a legitimate third brand, because if it was a legitimate third brand, when NXT won at Survivor Series last year, there would have been a boost in ratings, So that hasn't been there. As a result, it's just been this third WWE brand that's just kind of there. It's a Wednesday night WWE show. They're not really building for the future. It's not really making them money. Like, what is NXT? You look at their financials, and it's not benefiting anyone. Like, this isn't making them money. Not enough people are watching it to really drive home good ratings. And the people who are watching it are 50 plus, and they're not in the 18 to 49 demo that's going to drive revenue, drive viewership, drive ratings, drive the TV networks to want to advertise. Like, NXT is in such a weird position. Because, yes, they do produce the great bell-to-bell matches. You do get to see dream matches like Kushida versus Tommaso Ciampa, and dream matches like Raquel Gonzalez versus Rhea Ripley. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's a money sink for WWE. It's not doing anything to really counter-program AEW, because we've established now that AEW, their ceiling for ratings is like 1 million viewers. AEW is not really surging viewership. We're not seeing AEW Dynamite, increase to a point where it's flirting with Raw's ratings. We haven't seen that. We've seen that AEW Dynamite has a consistent 800,000 viewers. When there's a World Series on, or a debate, or there's a big news story, or there's a big political event going on, the ratings will go from maybe 800 to 850,000 for Dynamite and go down to 700, 750. And then when there's nothing on and they're unopposed, they'll get between 900 and 1 million. And then an MJF, Chris Jericho segment will get 1 million and 40,000 viewers, That's the ratings. NXT, it's been just fairly ineffective. I think that's the best way of putting it. NXT on the whole, ineffective is a good way of putting it, as far as trying to counter-program and one-up AEW. So, yeah, in that regard, I think it's fair enough that Vince McMahon wants to have less involvement in NXT, considering, once again, he's probably looked at the roster, he's probably looked at the ratings, looked at there's such a revenue sink for the company. NXT doesn't make their money. I'll reiterate what I just said. NXT, they don't draw in the viewership that's really going to drive home, ads and revenue and sponsorships. They don't have the viewership base that's going to really bring home those sponsors and those advertisers. They don't have the 18 to 49. The 18 to 49 is watching other stuff. They're not watching 25-minute matches. You've got, wrestlers who aren't really moving the needle. People like Damian Priest have potential, but given what they did with Keith Lee, I look at someone like Damian Priest and go, okay, he's going to win the NXT title in 2021, presumably, and then he's going to move to Raw, and then probably lose every match to Braun Strowman for 6 weeks, and then he'll be back in catering. That's kind of where NXT is. Overall, I'll call the video there. NXT has been disowned, apparently, according to Dave Meltzer, by Vince McMahon. So, I mean, it makes sense. I can see why Vince would want to disown NXT. It's fair enough. NXT has its place, but it's not really doing what it's supposed to this year. It's not really developmental, and it's not really a brand that people are captivated. NXT is just in a weird position. Comment, subjects on the drill.